Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. Mike, the third and final absolute number one for this year. I know we're supposed to get a couple next year, like Flash, and I think Martian Manhunter and Green Lantern have been announced already. But our third big one of the Trinity, absolute Superman, number one from DC. I grabbed a couple ones here. So we got the main cover. I believe that's Rafa Sandoval, and then you've got Jim Lee with the cover there. Debut issue, Jason Aaron writing this one. Again, this is DC, basically their version of the Ultimate Universe. You and I were fans of the first Batman issue. We liked that one. Thought some flaws in it, but we did think it was better, good, more good than bad. Wonder Woman, we were kind of on some moments we liked, some moments we didn't. Absolute Superman, we gonna get Jason Aaron on this completely, again, very much reinventing the character. So what we'll do here, we're going to kind of spoiler this. We're going to go through kind of main plot points, and then we'll kind of get our reactions to it. So, Mike, I'll kind of lay out what we have happening here in this first comic book, get your thoughts on it, and we'll talk about just where we think this is going and everything there. So we start out with this one. Basically, the changes to this Krypton, the L House of L. Very different. There's a caste system in Krypton. Sometimes that's been hinted at. It's a little more
Yes.
on the nose and shown here, but essentially the House of L, they're lower, considered lower tiers of laborers, things like that. Both his mom and his dad were kind of seen as outcasts in the society because they both had kind of more cautious views or worried about some of the things Krypton were doing with their own planet that was damaging it. And so they were sort of cast aside.
Kind of
Uh,
reminiscent of the Krypton show.
Krypton, yeah, a little bit of
Yeah.
that for sure.
So
Um,
we've kind of heard some of that plot before.
yeah, a little bit of that before. We flash forward, we go to Brazil basically. In this, Superman is sort of there's a diamond mine. Folks are being forced to sort of work by this evil Lazarus corporation, and so you kind of have they're having to do mining and things like that. Superman essentially goes through into the mine and mines all the diamonds for them. Kind of does his super strength thing where he turns the coal into diamonds for folks to kind of prevent them from being in trouble. And that's where we kind of see our villains of this, which is this group called Lazarus, which has their enforcers, which are called the Peacemakers. I'll kind of pull that up here. So obviously trending
Peacemaker.
off the character
Hmm.
Peacemaker.
Okay.
They start sort of torturing people, wondering how did this work get done. And so this checks Superman out, and here's our first appearance of Superman in the book. I will say pretty decent art by Rafa Sandoval. I think there's some
That
some
art,
decent.
I really liked it. I really liked the art.
In this Superman's appearance, you kind of see he's got his suit seems to have some sort of AI based thing, and I believe he's calling it Soul the entire time, and it's kind of warning him and telling him he should get out of there. And so I don't really know if it's sort of to mimic like the crystals of Jor-El that are typically in the Fortress of
The
Solitude,
Fortress of
or like the
Solitude. Yeah.
Kelex kind of thing that Superman occasionally has, or his dad has in the comics. We see that Lazarus starts to show up. Superman has some sort of ability of like a almost like atomic kind of red energy blast sort of thing. From the fight scenes that we see in here, you do see that he has X-ray vision because you do see him employ that a few times, but he
Right.
does seem to be a little bit power downgraded in that I don't really recall him using the heat vision or anything like that. He kind of has these weird gauntlets that seem to be kind of lit up a bit. So I don't know if that's like a solar powered thing. You can kind of see it pretty well here on the Jim Lee cover where that's going. And
Those
then
are solar
obviously,
panels
yeah, so
for,
maybe some solar panel kind of thing.
yeah.
Largely at the end, we have this Lazarus agent who's pursuing him, and he gets sort of captured and get cuffed. And of course, the agent who captures him right here, which that gives us to our big reveal: the Lazarus agent who threatens to shoot Superman at the end is Lois Lane. And then we have some
Oh,
after credit scenes that tease Brainiac, and then they actually show that the Kent farm has been purchased by Lazarus. So we know that Clark did not grow up there. And then we also get some hints that Superman, we know now he lived with his parents until he was 8 or 9, at least. And then
okay.
they kind of all disappear at the same time when Krypton's falling apart. So we don't know if they died. I guess there's going to be some mystery about kind of what happened from there, and kind of drop some breadcrumbs about the potential sort of things. before I get into my thoughts, Mike, just everything you saw there, what you've seen from the comic, you've gotten a chance to take a look at it, got a chance to look at it. What are your initial thoughts on all of this so far?
It's interesting, we have to take a step outside of the bounds of continuity, like we did with Marvel and the Ultimate Universe, and kind of get your feet planted on fresh ground and kind of roll with it. And we did well with Batman, with Wonder Woman, kind of, and now with Superman. This is different. Sometimes you wonder if the changes they made were different just to be for different sake. Like,
Hmm.
now Lois is the part of the enemy, like, maybe,
Yeah.
works for Lex Luthor, or this
Lazarus Company, you're not sure
Lazarus
who's.
company is
Wouldn't
kind of
be
like a,
surprised if that's the reveal down the line. Yeah.
Roxxon company from Marvel. So I don't know. It's kind of the thing for me that struck me about it was a couple of things. Number one, uh, I like the fact that he wasn't, just ultimately, immediately all powerful and indestructible. Like, he was able to get captured. That was interesting to me. But I
Hmm.
also like the fact that he, is still fighting for the oppressed. And that was like an integral part of the original Superman character, champion of the oppressed, right? And so I find that interesting. I like the way they set it up. We don't know what happened to him between 9 years old and however he is now, 20 something.
Yeah, it looks like
And
he's in his mid 20s in this, is
and
what it
then
kind of seems to be hinting at.
and B, we know his love interest is his adversary at this point, which makes you think, okay, at some point, you know, uh,
Will there be
probably
some sort of
later,
turn of
there's
character?
going to be some sort of turn of character. He'll be in some peril, and she'll have a change of heart and save him. That kind of thing. Kind of interesting twist that may happen in the future is kind of teasing right through this storyline. So yeah, I'm color me intrigued, sir. I'm down for it for a few more issues. Yeah.
So it's interesting in this, in that I simultaneously liked a lot of elements, and then there was a lot that were. I will say, of the three titles, this is the one that I would say now worries me the most of the three. In that
Ah,
Batman number one, what I will give absolute Batman number one, I think, to me at least, it still felt a lot like Bruce Wayne. Yes, she changed his circumstances, but the no kill rule was still there. He was still good with tech. He was very good at fighting. And even some of the changes they made, like, Alfred being a bit more adversarial. In a world where Alfred never met Bruce Wayne, it's always been implied he's been a spy. And so while he's a little more gritty than you'd imagine, I think it's not the farthest thing out there to imagine that Alfred could turn into that in a different world.
sure.
Even his mom surviving, there's still an element of his dad died very violently in front of him, which would explain the origin. Wonder Woman, the whole growing up as a witch thing, I don't really know, but you still, that's Wonder Woman's always had a little bit of a mystical element to it, so I can kind of, and there's still very much involvement with the gods and things like that, and that's kind of always been Diana's realm. Superman to me, I'll say this: I think the champion of the oppressed thing. Uh, I can't say it's not comic accurate. One of the things I think you will hear people complain about, because, and some of this is Jason Aaron, because Jason Aaron is not subtle in the way he writes. Jason Aaron has a very clear worldview, and you've seen that in his Punisher comic books and other Thor and in other ones that he's written. Subtlety is not his strong suit. And so I think while some of it was a bit too on the nose, and I wish there was a slight degree more subtlety, Superman's origin is he is the champion of the oppressed. Those original Superman issues were not at all avoiding that. He, especially so I can't get mad at that really. I do wish it was written a little more subtly, or just, a little more adept at just molding it into the story. But I can't say that's out of character, so I will say I like that piece of it. Some of the intrigue around Krypton is good. I do think the art from Rafa Sandoval was very good. I think the whole Peacemakers thing. I think Peacemaker is just a really cool character design, and I like what they did with it in the comics. So I thought that was interesting. Superman being limited in powers, I will say I think that's interesting as well because you kind of go back to what Action Comics 1, he really was just able to leap very tall buildings and was
With a
just super
single
strong,
bound.
right? He seems to have X-ray vision in this, but it does seem they've limited Superman's powers a little bit. Um, so I do like a lot of those elements. The things I don't like, I can't stand the Lois Lane change. I don't like the Lois Lane change at all. It feels completely out of left field. And it seems more done to be like, ooh, you didn't see that coming kind of thing.
I
And
didn't. I did not see that coming, sir.
where it bugs me, um, look, I know in our comment section we've done videos about Lois Lane. There are a lot of people who do not like Lois Lane. What I will say though is Lois Lane in the comic books, while she's not a superhero, has always been a very staunch good guy. Lois Lane has been a reporter, a champion of people. She's not a superhero, but she has always been in the comics portrayed as this very, very heroic character who uses her abilities as a journalist to expose corruption, expose fraud, to champion people. Yes, she's not a hero on the level of Diana or Superman, but in all honesty, there's also been a lot of respect, I think, for Lois Lane that it's just this human woman who is doing the best she can, especially if you go back to the time when Lois Lane was created. That was not I think that's the one thing that's failed to transfer over with Lois in the 2020s is the type of woman Lois was written as when she first appeared was not at all the most common type of woman that was portrayed
You gotta give the
in media.
guys props for that, and that was Jerry Siegel just writing this firecracker of a woman character who could stand on her own 2 feet. She didn't need any guys except for when she was falling out of buildings.
Yeah,
Um, Other than that, she was and dogged pursuit of the truth always.
yeah.
She was fearless and independent and smart as a whip and fearless. I mean, that
Yeah,
was her. That was her
and that's
character.
the part when you corrupt that to turn her into she's basically a government stooge working for this Lazarus Corporation. And who knows, they may iron it out. I'm imagining they show a general in here that's probably Sam Lane, her father. But
Yeah,
again, she's always kind of had issues with her dad. And so it's one of those things with how far do you twist a character out of who they are before it's like that's not the character anymore. And that's sort of what it feels like with Lois here, is that was done to, oh, they're against each other in this universe. And I'm not a huge fan of that. We'll see where that goes. Could it eventually be some sort of redemptive story arc and things like that? I do think, though, the one thing I don't like about that necessarily, again, I know Lois doesn't have a ton of fans that have seen our videos. There's one video we did about Lois that people very much let them be known about how they felt about her. I've always
right.
liked the character, and I've always kind of admired the fact that Lois was a good guy and that Lois became a better person because of Superman, but she was already a good person, and Superman admired that about her. This seems to be setting it more that she's either going to be bad or that Superman has to redeem her. And I don't like that dichotomy in the relationship, and that bugged me. I think the other part, this is a personal thing that just annoys the heck out of me. And the dialogue was clunky about how this here is the crest of the House of L, and they do this whole very awkwardly worded that it was the people of steel or whatever because they were. I get it. I know Smallville, I think, started this is a Kryptonian symbol for this. How Man of Steel leaned into it. Guys, this is an S for Superman. That's what it is. It's an S for Superman. That's what I'm so tired. It's Kryptonian symbology.
Of
No, it's an
hope.
S for Superman. Okay, like it's a comic book. We don't need this to be this is some ancient Kryptonian thing that looks. I've always hated that. It annoys the heck out of me. It's an S for Superman, and that's okay that it's an S for Superman, right? It's the same way that we can get on board with the fact that Batman, despite being super serious, shapes things like bats everywhere he goes because it's branding, because it's a comic book,
Yeah.
right? Daredevil took the time to put the DD on his chest. Like it's a comic book. You just got, and I'm just, man, I was clunkily done. I think they were, the people of steel, and they thought it would be dramatic. It just came off really clunky. And again, it's an S for Superman. Where I will say I am worried about this comic book.
Why can't an S just be an S?
Can be just an S.
Yeah.
Where I will say I worry about this. While I think the first issue is okay, and while I will say I don't think this is a bad comic book, I am certainly intrigued enough I will pick up a few issues. Jason Aaron to me is the it's the opposite of Batman. The absolute Batman universe, I'm giving a ton of grace to because it's Scott Snyder. And whether it's been Swamp Thing or that Noctera indie comic that you had me read that was really good, his run on Detective Comics was very good, and his New 52 Batman was excellent. I think even his All-Star Batman run that he did after that was really, really good. Jason Aaron is a tough writer for me to get on board with. I really did not like his Thor run. His Punisher run is among the worst comic books I've ever read in my life. What he's doing to Namor right now in the comic books is not great. And where he concerns me is this seems to be, and I hate how controversial this stuff becomes, but like this seems to be the Superman for a modern audience thing. And that with Jason Aaron typically is going to mean this will not be subtle, and that I worry where that will go eventually. I have no problem with people weaving political narratives into comic books. I've got no problem with Superman being the champion of the oppressed. That's what he should be. I will say there's a couple warning signs with me with Jason Aaron and some of the less than subtle dialogue with this, that this may just be turning into another Jason Aaron preachy comic book about his worldview. Um, and I
So
hope it doesn't because it's Superman, and I get it. It's a different Superman. It's probably leaning more into the Action Comics one thing. And again, I don't think this was awful. I am sure people are going to go off the rails and probably trash some of the dialogue in this more than it deserves to be. But I will say there were some things in this that I looked at and went, that's a little concerning, especially. And again, I kind of like some of Jason Aaron's work. He's been doing great on TMNT. I think that has been really solid. He's done a really good Batman series this year. Really delayed, but it's been okay. I just think what I will say, if I'm being honest about the review, while I like the first issue, while I think it's okay, while I will definitely come back to the second or third issue, some of the things that worry me about his writing pop up in here. And I was really hoping we wouldn't see much of that, but I will say it's there. Um, Overall, I guess we look at these three books. So if you had to give this, would you recommend this for people to read it, Mike, or would you be out on this?
like I said in the beginning, when you venture into the ultimate universe or the absolute universe, you have to remove your feet from the continuity and you have to take a stretch and step over here. And you have to be willing to take that chance, plant both feet in there. Don't leave one foot over here too much. Just plant and kind of go with it. And so I gave a few of the books, The Ultimate Universe, a chance, and I am giving all three of these Absolute Universe a chance. I would recommend them, especially for folks like me who've been out of Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman for a while and looking
Mhm.
for a jumping on point. I will roll with this. I know it's a little bit quirky, especially the Wonder Woman. I do think the Batman one was the most grounded of the three,
Mhm.
even though it's a stretch, but they are all a stretch. And so were the Ultimate Universe comics, guys. Let's really compare apples to apples here,
Yeah.
and not just bash DC because everyone loves to bash DC. I will say these three books ventured further afield, as far afield as the Marvel ones did, and less so in some cases, like the X-Men. Whoa.
Yeah.
Uh,
No,
so
I think if you compare it to the 2024 or 2023 version of the Ultimate Universe, it's a little more in line with that than like the original Ultimate
yeah, yeah,
Universe from the early 2000s.
yeah. And so I say yes. Let's indulge in these for a little while. I think all the stories have a little potential. I'm very intrigued about the Batman. I'm pretty intrigued about the Wonder Woman story. I kind of want to see where that goes, although that one's further left field than the Superman one, which is somewhere in the middle. But I'll roll with it. It's hard for us as comic book fans who are steeped in the lore to get used to something different. But as we've been saying on this channel for a year and a half now, like, boy, we really want the big two to do something different. And so they're doing something different. I'd say give them a chance.
Yeah, it's interesting that would I recommend this for people. I think if you really love Superman, I probably would give it a shot. I think if you're just interested in this overall universe, I don't think you're going to read this and go, gosh, that was awful. I think if you want a fresh jumping on point, this is that, and I will give all the absolute books that. I think all the number ones accomplished the goal of being it's a jumping on point. I don't know how many people are going to jump on, but it is a jumping on point. Um, I will say of the three, this was the one I was least impressed with. I think the artwork's fantastic. I will give Rafa Sandoval that. I thought that was
The
really, really
artwork
good
was
artwork
really good.
throughout.
It
I
was.
think some of the character design was pretty cool. I don't love the Superman shaggy hair look, but that's nitpicky. Um, I just I will say of the books, this one worries me the most in terms of I will say I think Diana still seemed like Diana. Bruce still seemed like Bruce. This seems to be a very specific Superman, and
We
while
don't
that may be in
know.
alignment
We don't know
with
much about him in this issue.
yeah, and so
We get
this could grow over time, and I think that's one thing we do too much of, and that's where I will give you a lot of credit, and that you have always had a little more of a grace that you give things in me. I am probably a little more snap judgment and harsh than you are. I do think it's very hard in 40 something pages to go, okay, I've seen everything I need to see.
yeah.
So I will give this time. I love the character Superman. I love the character Batman. I love the character Wonder Woman. I want to give it time. I hope it's good. I would lightly say I think you should check it out. But I would not tell people like, oh, you gotta read it. It's amazing. I think if you are looking for a jumping on point, I would say if you're a Marvel fan who's never been able to get into Superman, this is probably going to be a good entry point for you. If you're a hardcore big blue Boy Scout, Chris Reeves is Superman, and anything other than that is awful, this is probably not the tale for you.
It's going to be unrecognizable.
And so we'll see. But again, I will say too, I mean, Ultimate Spider-Man because they married him to Mary Jane, a lot of fans got on board with that really fast. That's a huge departure from Peter in the main universe, though. You're talking a
Right?
35-year-old, never been a superhero one. And we went with that largely because they gave us the Mary Jane thing. And I do kind of wish maybe they had done some identifiable element of maybe he would be married to Lois or with Lois or something so that you had some grounding element that still made it feel like Superman. I do think it's a bit divorced from the Superman of the comic books, and I do wonder how that will hit some fans other than others. But
Yeah.
I will say again, I'm not sitting here trashing it. I will just say part of this is hard. Jason Aaron is a writer that I have struggled with because I do think he can write some great stories. That Thor the God Killer thing with the God Butcher Gore was fantastic. Those issues were great. I've really liked his TMNT so far. He occasionally hits a home run. I will say he also at times lights things on fire and then throws gasoline on the fire. And so I wonder which version you're going to get. And that concerns me. So I will say, I got to throw the sports metaphor. This is kind of like when I see the Bears struggling and it's like, oh, this probably isn't going to get better because I've
Yeah.
seen that movie before. That's a bit how I saw with this, as I saw a few Jason Aaronisms sneaking through into the comics from like,
it's
I've seen how this worked for Punisher and Namor, and so
it's
I
like
hope
for
it's not
my
going down that line with
Raiders.
Superman.
It's like my
Same, yeah,
Raiders
same
this
with
year.
your Raiders.
They played a couple of games where they won, but it was kind of ugly. And then you're like, okay, what does that bode for the future? Well, here
Yeah,
we
you kind
are.
of know how that movie ends, and so I hope I'm wrong. I will give this. I think all these absolute books I'm in for at least the first six issues on them, short of them just going off of a cliff and being unreadable. But that's our thoughts on it. I would say light recommend. I think if you're looking for a fresh starting on point, if you're wanting to see a different version of Superman, I don't think you'll be like this is awful. I do want to say though, if you are a huge Superman fan of the Big Blue Boy Scout, and that's it, and like if Henry Cavill was too much of a departure for Superman
Oh
for you,
yeah,
and that
yeah,
made you mad, this is further than Henry Cavill, and so you're probably
that's for
not going
sure.
to
Yeah.
love that. But let us know. Did you guys check this out? Did you get a chance to read it? Let us know your thoughts as always. If you agreed with us, if you disagreed with us, that's completely fine. We love seeing those thoughts below, folks. We hope you had a great rest of your week. God bless you, and we'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.